Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Secretary General Welch, thanks for your commitment and your service. And, you know, we're going through some very difficult times, obviously, and as we talked about during your posture hearing, you've got some tough decisions you're having to make. While we're trying not to be too much of a problem on this side of the dais. Obviously, it is incumbent on us to ask those tough questions about the tough decisions that you've made. I want to focus a little bit more, though, on basically just a comment on what I've heard you say here today, because you're so focused on the reserve component. And I see you got General Jackson with you, General Welch. He's a great asset to the Air Force as well as to specifically the Reserve, and had the opportunity to meet with him briefly, but a very focused meeting last week relative to what's going on specifically at Robbins as well as specifically in the Reserve today, and the direction in which he and the two of you together are taking the Reserve. I also had a chance to meet with our Joint Stars folks, and we had the tag down, and General Butterworth is obviously very focused on that issue. Another difficult decision that you had to make, and as I told the folks at J-Stars, I mean, we knew that we were buying an old platform when we bought the 707s. And I just wish that we had made the decision that you're making today 5 years ago. I know we were being called upon then. The demands on Joint Stars was really very strong, but that demand is not going to weaken. Whether it's another conflict we ultimately are engaged in, or whether it's the drug wars, or there are just so many uses for that weapon system that I think the decision is probably the right decision. I just wish we'd made it 5 years ago. That doesn't help us today. But the fact of the matter is, I remain concerned, General, as I expressed to you during the posture hearing, that as we transition to the BizJet platform, I am really concerned that this $73 million that we've got in the budget today is not going to be sufficient to move us in the direction which you outlined that we need to go, i.e., by 2021, we're back up to the full component of platforms that we have today. So while I'm going to be gone, time we start considering this again, I do know your concern and your belief that that this is one of the more important platforms that we have. Obviously, it was one of the top programs in your priority list. So I simply say that I urge you to remain focused on that. And as we move forward in this budget cycle, I want to make sure we do everything we can to provide you with the right number of resources to get us to that ultimate goal in 2021. While it's not a part of this, as I said to you also before the hearing, great meeting with General Litchfield. He's doing a terrific job on the depot side. And while there was a lot of anxiety at Hill and Robbins about the movement of a 3-star to Tinker and downgrading, the feeling was a downgrading from a 2-star to a 1-star. Boy, this thing is working like I envisioned it would work. And General Litchfield is providing the right kind of leadership at exactly the right time for the 3 depots. And I'm confident they're all going to get just stronger over the years, particularly with the lack of funding that we're going to have to buy new weapon systems. It just means that we're going to have to maintain a lot of old systems for a long time to come. And with his leadership, particularly his vision for making sure that our depots do it the right way, that we're going to position the Air Force depots for the long term to be the strongest depots across the system. And I was very pleased to hear his comments and his vision Madam Secretary and General Welch, about the future of the maintenance of Air Force weapons systems. I'm pleased to hear, Madam Secretary, you particularly alluding to the fact of this integration idea. We have proven with the blended wing of Joint Stars that it can work. There was a lot of angst on both sides, the Air Force as well as the Guard, active Air Force as well as the Guard, when we put that wing together. But it has worked, and we've proven through that process as well as through the activation of reservists in Iraq and Afghanistan that we do have a blended force today that can carry out any mission that is given to either the reserve, the Guard, or the active duty folks. And the active duty now understands that those Guard and reserve folks can come in and immediately pick up the banner. What I particularly like about what you said is that you're going to take more advantage of the private sector, and particularly in the area of cybersecurity, which is our next battlefield. I think we all agree that that's the most likely, although usually we're always wrong about that. But we've got to be so focused on cyber now, and there's so much talent in the private sector that if you do take advantage of it and bring them in for what you need, let them go back to the private sector and continue to have that free flow, that just makes all the sense in the world to me. So I'm pleased to hear you're thinking that way about the future of the Guard and Reserve and their relationship with the active duty. You covered this, but just to make sure we're on the record, General Jackson and I looked at the Milcon project that we're going to have in the next budget. It's going to be a splendid building that we're going to be moving the reserve to. And just to make sure there's no doubt in the minds of anybody, Madam Secretary General Welch, it's my understanding from what you have said publicly and privately that the one portion of the Commission's report you disagree with is basically the disestablishment of the reserve over any period of time. Maybe reconfiguration, I understand that, but I want to make sure there is no doubt about your clarity on that point. Madam Secretary?
So I absolutely do not agree with the disestablishment of the Reserve Command until and unless such time, perhaps in the future, that we had really totally cracked the integration nut so well that we would no longer need a team of people who currently are at that command who are specialized in taking care of 70,000 reservists. It's a big job, and it's something that we have to continue, at least for the immediate future. But I keep saying in the distance because integration is the name of the game, and if there would be a way to evolve to such a point in the future, we should at least be open to that.
Yep. General, any additional comment?
No, sir, I agree with that. And if the question is about the Air Force Reserve writ large, I absolutely would not ever support getting rid of the Air Force Reserve.
Yeah. And the other question, is there any question in the mind of either one of you about the reception of the active duty force of Guard and reservists coming in and standing side by side with them with the training and the preparation that they now get for the mission that they're being assigned and integrating with the active force?
Senator, I don't think so. I think the training is good. I think one of the things that the Commission recommends in terms of better integration that we wholeheartedly support is the idea that we have to look hard at, should we have multiple commissioning sources, for example, or commissioning programs? Should we have different NCO, professional military education programs, or should we integrate that to create this continuum of service across the components and train and develop our people in more similar and integrated ways? So that's the way we think we should head.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Chambliss. Senator Ayotte.